Witam serdecznie i oddaję głos naszemu panu Moretto, który przyjechał z Bresci i dzisiaj będzie kontynuować właśnie wątki dotyczące zarządzania projektem tłumaczeniowym, o którym była już mowa wczoraj. Wstęp na to, że dzisiaj są nowi uczestnicy w naszym seminarium. Pan Moretto będzie króciutko właśnie pisać, na czym polega działalność jego firmy, po czym właśnie przejdziemy do meritum naszego dzisiejszego spotkania. Dziękuję.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Luca Moretto. I am General Manager of SMG. SMG is a group of translation companies based in Italy, in the UK, in Latin America, in the USA and Germany. We had our first meeting yesterday, so I just give you an introduction for those of you who were not here yesterday. We took a look at the scenario of our present-day translation market. A market that will be, hopefully, your market as well, as soon as possible. A market which is characterized by severe problems in terms of service quality level. The level of service quality is pretty low to our eyes, and as a matter of fact, you may all know that the translation quality around is not so perfect, and these contributed to a sort of devaluation of our profession, of devaluation of our services as well, to such an extent that we are no longer perceived as professionals, as skillful professionals, but rather as unexperienced, untrained and unreliable persons. And that's why the prices of our services are so destined to go down. And this is, of course, why our clients would prefer buying our services at lower prices, simply because they do not believe that we are up to the task. So, as we said yesterday, our goal should be that of putting through a solid high-level service quality in order to demonstrate to our clients that we can achieve also good results, that we can be reliable, that we can be of help. I'd say now we can take a look at a very short video. It's about 15 minutes. This video will go through the various themes that I will later explain to you better into detail in the rest of our talk. Okay? And finally, you're all welcome to ask questions if you have any. If you don't have any, please invent some questions, because I'm here to help you, okay? And ask everything you want to know. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at the video. Enjoy.
Organisation and management of translation projects. The SMG system. Translations. Good and or useful. A translation is good when it is faithful. It must communicate the message with the maximum accuracy possible, using the specific language of a sector, medical terminology, etc. A translation is useful when it helps the client. The client purchases a service according to specific requirements. Sometimes a less accurate service is all that is needed, just like buying a basic mobile phone with fewer functions. It's a text that nobody is going to read. I just need to understand the meaning. Sometimes reworking is required, just as when an advertising text with more appeal is needed to sell. I have to sell abroad, and perhaps something more needs to be said or put differently. The need for a less accurate service or reworking must be agreed in writing so that the client is aware that the translation is not faithful and that it may mislead those who are not in the know. In order to translate and rework the form and contents, it is essential to quantify the skills of your translators by assessing them through entry tests and checking every job, without relying solely on a CV. Evaluating translators. When? We evaluate a translator's linguistic skills both via an entry test, required before agreeing to work together, and via feedback from revisers who check and correct every translation. We look at the reviser's feedback on a monthly basis to update the evaluation of the translator in our database. This allows any corrections to be pointed out and appropriate training, education or information to be given. Evaluating translators. Indicators. We evaluate linguistic quality by assigning a score to each of the following indicators: syntax of the phrase, lexis, correct terminology, comprehension of contents, formatting layout, and other criteria not listed here which evaluate consistency according to cultural knowledge and personality. Scoring. For each indicator, a score is given, calculated by the number of inaccuracies and errors found on average in one page. By error, we mean an incorrect choice, and by inaccuracy, a correct choice which could be replaced by a better one. When a company applies this scoring system, they can set the number of errors and inaccuracies allowed for obtaining a certain score. Syntax includes the accuracy of the syntax, phrase construction, declension and conjugation, and of spelling and punctuation in the target language. It only evaluates the form of the sentence, i.e., how it was constructed. It does not take into account the faithfulness of the translation, nor the choice of correct terms. Lexis evaluates the contents by single term, i.e., the use of correct terms that faithfully translate the original ones. Comprehension indicates the comprehension of the original message and its correct translation. It takes into consideration both the comprehension of the source language and the specific sector concepts. It also includes errors and lexical inaccuracies due to the poor knowledge of the source language and/or specific sector. Formatting shows the level of precision of page layout, which must be faithful to the original when requested, or at least presentable. Mother tongue translators, pros and cons. It is always advisable to entrust a translation to a person whose mother tongue is the language in which the translation will be written. Clearly, the translator must also understand the foreign language well too. The translation will generally be better as the mother tongue translator has used and written in that language since birth. But the result is often disappointing. Why? We are all native speakers of our own languages, but how many fellow countrymen and women write and speak our languages really well? According to SMG statistics, in Italy, only 16%, but all nations have similar problems. Those who go abroad gradually lose syntactic and lexical accuracy. Even after a few months, fluency in a mother tongue language is lost, and the first instances of language contamination appear, importing foreign terms or structures into their own language. Those who come from multilingual countries, such as Anglophone and Francophone African countries, or former Soviet Union states, often use local language variants. Linguists, pros and cons. Many translation studies courses provide a good basis for addressing the professional growth of translators. However, the effectiveness of translations carried out by linguists is often disappointing, so much so that some European Union institutions no longer consider translation degrees sufficient to join their staff. Why? Linguists rarely have lexical comprehension of a sector, concerning a specialist sector, sufficient to avoid misunderstandings. They do not know the sector. The result improves when linguists work in the industry and in this way begin to understand the subject matter. Linguists lack first-hand understanding of the situation they are translating and rely on dictionaries with unexplained, decontextualised terms. They lack practical experience. They do not know that the meaning of a term varies according to circumstance. A is not always translated by A. Without this awareness, they base their choices on purely theoretical justifications, showing themselves to be ignorant and out of touch in the eyes of the client. Many schools wrongly teach literal translation, and few undertake internships or begin their career within a company. Instead, they rush headlong into the freelance market, unprotected and open to being exploited, receiving complaints, hardly any work, and few opportunities for professional growth. Industry-specific experts, pros and cons. An industry-specific expert is someone who has studied and/or worked in that sector, just as a lawyer is an expert in the legal field, or a foreign distributor of a company is an expert in the sector that that company operates in. Most small and medium enterprises carry out their own translations via their distributors and administrative staff, who understand the sector and therefore also cover their labour costs in terms of business inactivity. Often, the translation quality of an industry-specific expert in the relevant sector is lacking. Why? They have not necessarily studied languages. Therefore, they may have difficulties in writing and using good syntax. They are busy carrying out their official role in the company and do not have much time to translate or edit texts. For example, a lawyer prioritises his legal practice while a salesperson spends more time on sales, leading to their translation duties taking second place and inevitable delays occurring. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Let's interact with others to achieve a positive final result. Even if we entrust everything to Superman, we still have to check for any oversights. Working in a team is necessary, everyone with their own skills, helping each other by checking their work. Project management, work process. Teamwork between translators and revisers requires the coordination of a project manager, who is responsible for this task and is not busy doing other activities. Good management is normally time-demanding and challenging. For this reason, PMs are helped by assistants, who do the back-office tasks, also operating in the offices abroad to enable a continuous work process around the clock across most time zones. The following is a list of the main project management activities. Analysing service specifications. Identifying the quality level requested in order to choose translators according to their skills and revisers to integrate those skills and check them. Collecting reference material for translation. Estimating project duration, benefits of using technology and project costs. Formulating a detailed project proposal for the client. Appointing translators and revisers by means of written purchase orders that are clear and cannot be disputed in the future. Monitoring every stage of the work process, acting as a reference point between those using the service and those providing it. Project management. Tips. Give your team prior notice. Inform the members of your team before the order arrives so that they can prepare themselves. Appoint revisers at the same time as the translators and provide them with the source text straight away so that they can analyse it. Quality kit. To prepare the members of your team, a quality kit should be put together, including a reference contact for the client to clarify any uncertainties, reference material, validated glossaries produced using CAT tools, previous correct translations and TMs created from these translations, training and information for the team through specific meetings, project specifications that include service requirements and client recommendations, contact between translator and reviser so that they consult each other right from the translation stage. Tell the translators to make their uncertainties known well before the deadline so that they can check with the client or terminologists. Making the translator aware of the need for proofreading. Remind the translators to proofread their work before the deadline, highlighting the need to produce a text that is ready to use. In this way, the translator understands that we are paying attention and will be more inclined to take us seriously. Revision by section. Long translations exceeding 10 pages are handed to the reviser in sections so that he or she can give feedback to the translator straight away, and translators can improve their work early on. On the basis of the feedback, the project manager will evaluate whether the translator is up to standard and can decide how to proceed. The first section given to the reviser should be 1 page long. Reviser proofreads twice, especially for advertising texts or texts intended for publication. 2 separate rereadings by the reviser 2 days apart is required. Project manager checks. In addition to the revision by revisers, the PM also directly checks translations and may get the translator or reviser to correct the following. Correct transcription of numbers and proper nouns, which are often incorrect from oversight, copy-paste errors and careless application of CAT tools. Formatting of text. Completeness. Have all paragraphs been translated? Spelling and syntax. Use software to check syntax and spelling, which is also incorporated into CAT tool software. Lexis, if using CAT. If CAT tools have been used, check that the terminology used complies with the official terminology provided. Trados enables checks to be made using Terminology Verifier, while Acros enables checks to be made using Crossterm. Translators and revisers. Better in-house. Most freelance translators on the market today are poorly trained. Many young people rush headlong into the market without undertaking internships or training which would allow them to develop and avoid damaging society or their own reputations in the process. They receive complaints, hardly any work, and have few opportunities for professional development. The number of agencies selling poor quality translations by freelancers is on the rise. Founded with the sole purpose of short-term gain, they build themselves up on the basis of a constant turnover of clients and are destined to close down once profitability falls. These enterprises do not contribute to the cultural growth of the industry and instead cause instability in the labour market. The solution, adopted by Studio Moretto Group and recommended to other organisations if their internal translation demand justifies a similar structure, is to employ in-house translators and revisers because the quality improves. It is easier to train in-house staff because they work in the same place, which is a more satisfying environment with the possibility of focusing on professional development without the uncertainty of freelancing. Response time improves. In-house staff can address any unexpected requests. Costs are reduced. In-house staff have a fixed cost, but if they are efficient and there is a lot to translate, then the cost per page is generally less than that of a freelancer who has a lot of spare time and therefore has to make more money per page. A business culture is created, especially when senior members of staff teach juniors, generating a continuous cycle of knowledge sharing. Linguistic research, authoritative company. A conscious approach to translation leads to the need to conduct challenging linguistic research. Studio Moretto Group has its own linguistic research institute, but also carries out research simply by assigning this activity to one or more members of staff. Some research goals: finding solutions to the everyday linguistic and terminological queries of in-house translators. There are also in-house terminologists for this purpose. Studying technology and procedures, increasing the efficiency of work processes. Contributing to the cultural growth of human society, with positive consequences for the business in terms of authoritativeness and corporate social responsibility. CAT tools, consistency and time saving. Unlike machine translation, which unsuccessfully and riskily attempts to reproduce translations replacing the human translator, computer-assisted translation, CAT, is based on the storage of previously translated texts and the subsequent retrieval of their repetitive parts, without having to retranslate them each time. Using specific software, called CAT tools, copy-paste operations of repetitive parts of texts that were manually effected in the past can today be carried out automatically. Furthermore, CAT tools enable us to check and correct previous translations before inserting them into the new text, giving us the possibility of improving the quality of text precisely because previous translation solutions provide the starting point. For example, the conscious use of CAT tools produces higher terminological consistency across documents, as translators have previous referent texts and an extremely useful glossary function that is constantly available. Our Linguistic Research Institute has conducted extensive research on CAT tools, and we believe that they can only be successful used under some working conditions. If texts are extremely repetitive, if the client requests proofreading and revision services for the recovered parts to check that the translator has updated them, for example, in the case of technical manuals, where any product codes, sizes, etc. must be updated. If the client provides previous reference translations that have already been corrected and validated. What is needed for a good translation? Revision and checking, a dedicated project manager role, offices abroad, in-house translation staff, linguistic research staff, and the investment in CAT tools.
So that was it, and now we can go over it again, okay? Much more into detail. I just simply wanted to give you a general idea of the main concepts and themes that we can now debate together, okay? And so basically, this was nothing but a set of procedures that we apply in order to provide an appropriate quality level. And well, they can be helpful for you if you are a freelancer as well, because you get to know what an LSP, what a language service provider, would theoretically look at. And they can be much helpful for you, even if, for instance, you get to work as an in-house translator with a major corporation, let's say. Okay, so it is our way to give you some tips, you know, so that you can maybe promote some change in that company. And if for the case, should you be willing to establish an own studio or an own agency in the future, well, this, to our eyes, is intended as a set of tips that can possibly help you to provide a good service. Alright? So we can start from the very beginning and maybe just skip to the PowerPoint presentation. And we would like to start back again with the first slide, translation good and or useful. What is a good translation? Let's start saying this. I mean, a good translation is, theoretically speaking, a faithful translation. So translation where you can pass through the message, okay, with no problems. And a translation that uses the sector-specific language. It reads well, the message goes through, so it is a good, a faithful translation. But we all know that faithfulness is not what people always need. For instance, let's put it so. Please, can you translate this for me? But, you know, I don't need such an accurate service because nobody will ever read this text. It's a manual, nobody will ever read it. I have to close it in a cabinet. Or it's like when you buy a cellular phone, maybe you can be satisfied with a phone with less functions as well. So maybe sometimes the client may urge you to provide a service that is not so accurate. And this translation, less accurate, is anyway helpful for the translator, for the client. It is useful for him. And then the moral question is up to you. Will I deliver this service or not? I am not giving you any moral suggestion. It's up to you. But important for you is to know that useful can also be helpful. And helpful is not always good or faithful. Okay? It will be up to you. And then you have also a second case, a case where the client needs something more than a translation. So I need something better. I want to sell my, who knows, my furniture in Brazil. This is the source text. Please translate it, but make it even give it some extra appeal, because I really wanted to sell. So in that second case, maybe you have to add something more, or to retouch the text, to localize it in a very specific text, in a very specific way. So in this second case too, your translation will not be faithful, that is theoretically good. So it will be up to you. Okay. Important is for you to put everything in writing through the purchase order. My dear client, it will not be a faithful translation because you want less accurate service, or you want reworking. You want me to put something more in it. Okay, so put it in writing and tell the client exactly that the translation, of course, will not be faithful. Okay, but I will not solve the moral question for you now. But all in all, I mean, we can move to it. Yeah. Let's say, let's be like an LSP now. Okay, you are an LSP, and let's put it so. You want to translate something, all right, or you want to rework something. So what do you need first? You need to possess an objective evaluation of the quality level of your translators, of your revisers, of your staff. Because if you lack that knowledge, if you don't know what your people are capable of doing, well, you can't move on. You cannot gamble and hope you are lucky, okay, and everything goes okay. You have to know your car, okay, basically. And so do not rely on CVs. I'm the best translator of the world. I don't trust you. Do never trust anybody, please. Never. Okay? Never trust CVs, never trust anything, but always, and we can move to the next slide, always evaluate your translators. When? Well, according to our experience, the evaluation takes place both through an entry test. So you, let's say you apply for a job, and we submit to you an entry test, and you get a scoring, okay? And then this evaluation should be repeated with every single piece of translation that the translator delivers. Because who knows, maybe you passed the entry test because your grandmom, who's from London, did a wonderful translation for you. Who knows? Okay? Or, let's put it so, I'd like to know if you improve with time. I'd like to know if you do not improve, and I'd like to know how I can help you. So important for me in that case is to have a kind of a tracking of your competences, ups and downs, of your ability, how you improve. And that's what we do at SMG. By the end of the month, we collect all the feedbacks that are expressed, that are given by the revisers with every single piece of work. We collect them and we update the quality level scoring of every single translator, so that our human resources department can contact the translators, in-house translator or freelance translator, and say, okay, you are doing better, compliments, or you have some problems. What can we do to improve? What can we do to help you? So you may be willing to call some corrective actions as well. And that's important. Never forget it. Moving to the next slide, I'd like to stress on this fact. Indeed, the quality level of the translation can be measured. It can be measured. It's nothing subjective to our eyes. Okay, I don't want to give you absolute statements. To our eyes, it can be measured. And we have prepared a procedure, which you see in this slide, that enables us to carry out this evaluation in an objective way. As a matter of fact, on the left-hand side of the PowerPoint, you see some indicators like syntax, lexis, comprehension, so the aspects that we look at. And on the right side, you see we count the number of errors and inaccuracies per page, and then we have tables. We have some tables that tells us, okay, if a translator commits so many errors, lexical errors or comprehension errors in one page, she gets this scoring. And it is an objective way. An error is an error. What is an error? I read the definition. By error we mean an incorrect choice. I translate shot like dog, I don't know. And you also have inaccuracies. Inaccuracies can be correct choices, but that could be better. I mean, if you have you have chosen a correct term, let's say, but there is a term that could be better than that. Okay, and so you have an inaccuracy. These are our descriptions, our names. I mean, this is our procedure. Okay, this is not the Bible. And every single company can set the number of errors or inaccuracies in order to attribute a score. For instance, I tell you, we have 4 scores: top quality, medium level quality, basic, and not enough, poor quality. Okay, and we have a number of errors or inaccuracies allowed for every single score. Alright? And then the next two slides simply give you a description of the four indicators. So what do we mean by syntax? Well, syntax is nothing but grammar, punctuation. If I say this is my dog, okay, this is a grammar error, nothing to say, okay, this is a syntax. And please read the last line. It does not take into account the faithfulness of a translation nor the choice of correct terms. So it's like grammar, punctuation. Then you have lexis, using the right terms. And if we move on with the next slide, we have like comprehension. That indicates the comprehension of original message and its correct translation. So I can understand Italian and I can translate it faithfully into Polish, let's say, okay? And well, you know, there's something very interesting. You may find a very high level of lexical errors if, and maybe syntax troubles, if the translator does not comprehend the text, okay? So if I translate something I don't really understand, I will definitely do some mistakes. It comes without saying. And okay, the fourth criteria is formatting. It's the layout, the page layout. Alright, then this is also very interesting. In the next slides you see the pros and cons of being a mother tongue translator, of being a linguist, of being an industry expert. And well, if you're a mother tongue, okay, let's put it so. You should always entrust texts to mother tongue translators. Wow, wonderful. Why? Simply because mother tongue translators have more experience with that target language, because it's their language. Okay? So statistically speaking, but only statistically speaking, their output, their translation will read better than the translation done by me, I'm Italian, and I couldn't write in Polish. Okay, it is rational, but we usually have a number of problems also with mother tongue translators. It doesn't read that good. Okay? Why? Well, I give you three examples, three possible reasons why they do have these problems. First reason, to our eyes, is that, okay, our fellow countrymen and women, and maybe, well, they are not all so good at writing, aren't they? I mean, we conducted some research and found the statistics where 16% of Italian native speaker can actually write Italian well, while the other 84% are not so good, or do deliver poor quality translation. And these are some facts, but this can be said also for other countries, to our eyes. And we have big problems with the Anglo-Saxon world, for instance, England and the USA. We found there is a very poor quality level there. Well, we had some good results with Spain. Fantastic country. Enjoy. So the second aspect, the second source of problems, the second threat is the contamination. Like, let's put it so, you move away from your country. Okay, you want to spend your life in Italy. After 6 or 8 months, maybe your Polish would decline a little bit. And this is the major problem for local LSPs, for local agencies, who usually refer to local staff, so to people from other countries who have moved to that country where the local agency is based. And this is why you may find that their syntactic level is all too often not satisfactory at all, right? And this is why actually our group is now aiming at establishing offices abroad in order to be able to hire inland staff. We call them the inland native speakers. So native speakers, mother tongue translators who still live there, they are inland, right? And this was exciting. But the third point is a very exotic point. It's linked to the local variance of languages. You know, you have these African countries where, African countries where people claim they are English speakers. Of course they are English speakers. They also speak French. Maybe English and French are considered as their mother tongues. I don't know, but often they are. But they are variants, regional variants of English, local variants of English and French. So it's not the official standard language you may expect to provide to your clients. And so keep your eyes wide open, especially with the ex-USSR countries where Russian was, for instance, the official language, but it was not their language. So Russian is in Russia, and it will be very hard for you to find, statistically speaking, a good level of Russian in countries that had taken up Russian as the official language. But all too often, LSPs do not consider these aspects, because they simply read CVs, mother tongue, Russian, and Ukrainian. Okay, let's go. But it doesn't work like that. Okay. Well, let's move on with the next slide. Pros and cons of being a linguist. We use the term linguist in a slightly biased way. By linguist here we mean general translator, a translator who do not possess a specific knowledge in a specific area, in a specific subject today. Okay, and well, what is the problem that we may have as after we take our degrees in translation or applied languages or whatsoever? The problem will be that we have not first-hand experience in that specific sector, like mechanical engineering. Are you engineers? No, I'm not an engineer, you're not engineers, so we may not know probably that sector. And so how can we translate? How can we translate an engineering manual? It will be very hard for us. And so errors, inaccuracies, problems. And the only thing we have, and the only thing that most of our colleagues have, are dictionaries. Dictionaries that are all too often, lacking a context. Like they give you some general descriptions, but well, they do not fit your present situation, maybe. Many dictionaries are the result of the work done by some agencies who have collected glossaries, okay, and they have then published a dictionary. But maybe that agency, okay, which agency was working in the mechanical engineering sector, but for that specific client, with that specific use of terms, so this may cause some troubles to you. Okay, A cannot always be translated as A. You can read it in the slide. We have a bad tendency. We have a tendency, at least in Italy. I think you are better on here, But in Italy we have a bad tendency of translating word by word. So we take the word, we look in the dictionary, okay, this word is dog in English, and I write dog. No, I mean, there is no correspondence between words. You cannot say that cane in Italian is dog in English, okay, to such an extent. But you cannot always say that, because dog in English, how do you translate dog in English? In Polish, for instance, well, dog, you should have an image in your mind, no? A funny animal with 4 legs, barking, bow bow, with his tail. And then you should read, in your mind, read this image and say it in Polish. Okay? And maybe if this process of transformation of an English word dog into the icon, into the image of that funny dog, and then its rendering through the Polish, through its Polish name in Polish, is done correctly, you have a good translation, a faithful translation. But you should, to our eyes, you should go through images always. And these images are like that painting. They should be very accurate. They should have all the details that are needed. So always go through images. We always go through images, okay? And you can't say that, cane in Italian is always dog. Cane is dog. Most of the times is dog in Italian. And okay, next we have some other problems due to the education of the translators, as many schools indeed teach literal translation, and especially the Anglo-Saxon world, it happens like this, you know. You have 4 words, please put their translation below, and this is literal translation. It makes no sense, right? Or all too often, okay, people do not undertake internships or training with some specific companies that would allow them to grow professionally. So they simply rush headlong into the freelance market. You know, I'm a Superman, I can do it. With no experience, with no guidance at all. And they then create chaos and damage their own image as translators. And they eventually damage society, human society as well. Okay? And they simply pull down the professionality of our trade, you know? So that's a big problem. If we then move on to the next slide, we can take a look at industry expert. What is an industry expert? Well, a lawyer, for instance, is good at law. Okay, he's an expert in legal affairs. So, is he or she expected to translate properly? Yes, maybe she knows the terminology. So, Lexis could be okay, but what shall we say about syntax? Think of an engineer. He has not taken language studies, okay? So maybe syntax is lacking. And this is a reality, we then came to a kind of conclusion. We need a cocktail. We need to mix these people together, because, you know, every single category of these people, every single category has something to say, and maybe something the other categories lack. Okay, so our suggestion is to work in team, so that you have an interaction, all right? And this is the rationale. This is the reason why you should have a translation plus revision process. You know, because it's like the Bible. The Bible that translated hundreds of times for 2000 years or even more, and it is nothing but the result of a constant revision process. So keep revising, keep this dialogue with your peers keep this dialogue with the client as well. Ask the client, well, you know, what do you exactly mean by that? I mean, okay? And then project management is our next slide. Why do you need project management? Simply because you have translators, you have revisers, maybe you have terminologists as well coming in, you have IT experts who are involved in this process. And so that's why you basically need a project manager, a kind of a director, okay, music director. And our policy was that of combining project managers together with their assistants. You know, we have these teams, okay? A project manager who's the chief, and she has her assistants. They basically do the back office activities, they help, while the project manager is more kind of a supervisor, right? And project management is best when you can work through many time zones. Like we have an office in Latin America. It means that we work from 8:30 Italian time to 1 o'clock at night Italian time. So we work like 18 hours or so. And this enables you to manage translation projects with, with accuracy. Okay, you can really work long. And okay, what is the very, what are the very activities of a project manager? You can find them back in this slide. Like the project manager usually analyzes the service specifications. You cannot say that you have a standard procedure for every translation. Every translation is and will be word per se. A specific word, and the project manager should be capable of picking up or understanding the peculiarities of that specific job, because every specific job has its own requirements, okay? And these requirements should be gathered by the project manager and passed down to the translators and advisors. And indeed, the project manager, we read here, appoints the freelancers and advisors, okay, and gives them these specifications, okay, a guide. And the PM should also supervise the work done by these staff. It's almost like what the so-called account does in the advertisement agencies. Advertisement agencies have the account managers who supervise the various people involved in the graphic design or advertisement process. Let's then move on to some tips in the next slide. Make the most of these tips because they can also help you even if you are a translator or freelance translator, right? The first tip for us is give your team prior notice. Wow, wonderful. The client could possibly give me, a text in 4 days. So today, now, let me give a call to the translator, to the reviser. Let me give him/her a prior notice. Okay, in 4 days, a text in this specific area of interest will arrive, so I will submit it to you. Do so with your in-house translators, with your freelancer translators, whatever, but give them a prior notice because they should get prepared for their job, okay? And they should have the opportunity to have some training maybe, to have a look at some reference material before they get started. That's fundamental to our eyes. And then, with the quality kit, you read this slide. Well, quality kit is not an Italian, it's not an English name, it's not an Italian name, it's our way to say so. It's a kit, it's a mix, it's a collection of material, of instruments of aids that can contribute to good quality level service. And our project managers, as a matter of fact, they provide all these aids. Like first, we always try to find a reference person, like the client himself, herself, or people of his staff. Like I don't know, you work for an automotive industry. Maybe there is a technician somewhere in the factory who can help in case your translators have a problem. So always find that person, ask your client to refer you to that person in case of need. Alright? Second aid could be providing reference materials to your staff, to your translation staff. Reference material like validated glossaries or official translation memories or other manuals done for that client and being then validated. Then you should, third point, training and information, you should provide your staff with some specific training and with some specific information on this subject area. Like we have the bad habit of putting together like videos on specific machineries, on specific products, and we send the translators these short videos, and that tell them a little bit how like a tractor moves, we said yesterday, right? And okay, fourth point, project specifications means you put together all these specifications into a kind of a guide in writing, and you submit this guide to the translator so that he or she can be referred to her for any need she may have. And then, yes, contact between translator and the revisor is really helpful, okay? So that they can interact, okay, while doing things. So that the revisor can give feedback to your translator while the translator is doing that job. And as a matter of fact, we will take a look then to practice that we have in place. Like we can give you like 20 pages to translate, but please, my dear translator, please send me the first batch, the first part of this text, the first 1 or 5 pages after 2 days, so that I submit them to the revisor straight away, and so that the revisor can eventually contact me and you and give you a feedback, so that you can improve, so that you can fine-tune, okay, while doing that translation. So do not wait till the deadline has come, but always move earlier if you can, okay? So in this slide, okay, with the right slide, we have some other tips, like making the translator aware of the need for proofreading, for correcting. In this case, it should be that the translator has to, of course, check his or her translation before submitting it to the revisor. So translate it and read it, please, okay? Second aspect, revision by section. This is exactly what I mentioned to you before. So we divide the texts into sections, into like batches, and we therefore improve and speed up the revision process. Then last point, revisor proofread twice. Okay, this is something advisable especially for advertisement texts or for those publications that are so important. If you have to revise a text of that sort, you should, for us, you should read it twice, maybe at a distance of a couple of days, okay? It's highly advisable because the second time you read through it, you would eventually find some aspects that you haven't seen the first time. And so, we have some other tips here in the next slide. Okay, this is the so-called validation process. You know, the validation comes after the verification. In a project management terms, you have like translation, then you have a verification, that is revision, review, and so on, done by the reviser, and then you as an agency, you as an LSP, you need to validate that the verification was done correctly. So you have basically a second level revision here, and this is entrusted to the project manager, him or herself, to the person in charge, to the person with the responsibility, right? This check has to be done also, it can be done through the assistance of the project manager, but it is intended most of all to spot out the most common errors that maybe the reviser has overseen. Like, I read, correct transcription of numbers and proper nouns. That's so important. Especially if you use cut tools, you know, you have the fuzzy, the repetitions, and maybe, you know, you have codes of machinery inside, numbers, details that should be changed, but haven't. And maybe the reviser, you know, she reads through the text, maybe quickly, maybe she is thinking of something else, you know, and maybe she skipped those errors. So it's up to the project manager to do this further verification. And the PM should also give a check to the formatting of text, to the layout, and then to the completeness. You have 4 paragraphs in the source text and 4 paragraphs in the target text. So everything has been fully translated. And then spelling and syntax. Okay, it is advisable to use spelling and syntax checking tools. Most CAD tools already have similar applications. Use them, it's better. And this can also help you when you use a CAD tool like Acros, like Travels. This can help you also to check the lexis. Because with CAD tools, you give translators and advisors like a reference glossary, reference terminology, and you want to make sure that that terminology has been used accordingly. So these CAD tools, please keep it in mind, they allow you basically to make sure that terminology has been used in a consistent way. Alright. So it's very thick, isn't it? You have lots of procedures, you have huge commitment, okay, big responsibilities, so it's better if you use in-house stuff. It's better because your in-house staff, so I mean employees, okay, they all work together in the same room, it makes fun, they can interact, quality improves, basically. And then you can react in a very swift way. I need these 2 pages to be done, alright? You do them. You don't have to make thousands of telephone calls and maybe find freelancer who's available. So it's much more convenient, and it is much more convenient also in economic terms, because all in all, if you have lots of pages to translate every day, you can be sure that you have enough work for that in-house translator, and he/she will always work. If you are a freelancer, maybe, as I told you yesterday, you have to issue the invoice, you have to find, to look for your clients, you have to, stay hours on the phone, and purchase orders, signing, it is a mess. So you work a lot, and you have to charge for that time as well. So let's say, all in all, you can translate 5 pages every day, because the rest of your day goes away with bureaucracy, with marketing, and this is not linguistics. So that's why it is more convenient to, I would say, charge an in-house translator with texts. Okay. And okay, one of the last aspects here is the authoritativeness that derives you if you conduct language research projects. Also as an LSB, for instance, we have an own institute, the Centro di Ricerca Linguistica, CRL. I'm the president of this center, and we do carry out research. It's not the high-level research that you can find in a university like this. It is a more day-to-day practical and applied research, like we put together briefs, we put together some guides, like this guide that you have here on your screen, and we try to make these guides available for our staff in-house, for our freelancers as well, because we do also have some freelancers. And so it's a very practical research. It is also research intended to look into the new technologies that are emerging in our sector, like the CAT tools, for instance. And it is a kind of research that the big companies really love, because they know what research and development R&D is, and they truly appreciate if you do the same as they do. Yeah. And then the final slide is about the CAT tools. You all know them, so I don't need maybe to go through this slide, but simply would like to draw your attention to the fact that using a CAT tool is not only a way to recover phrases, segments, and so to reduce costs. It's not only that, it's rather a way for you to keep a consistent terminology throughout your documentation, because you have glossaries, you have reference, TMs, translation memories, and you start from the fruit and result of the work you've done the previous time, so you can just improve it, isn't it? And then, what could be of interest for you? Translation tools should be used only in some specific cases to our gauging. Well, if texts are very repetitive, of course, and only if the client has entrusted you both with the translation and the revision process, because the so-called fuzzy segments should be revised always. Okay, and do use CAT tools if the translation memories given to you have truly been validated by the client. because otherwise the GIGO process principle applies garbage in and garbage out. Okay, GIGO. So you can't work on memories that have been produced and not corrected by the client, or by, would not be done by a reliable NSP. Okay, because then it will be your fault. Your translation is not correct, so you are wrong. No, please, but you gave me those TNs, and you should have validated them. It's not my problem, it's your problem. And they kill you, all right? So make sure the TMs have been validated. And all in all, we come to the final conclusion, like a brief of the main aspects we believe to be relevant for establishing a good level service. So revision and checking, don't trust them, try to check everything before delivery. Then you need a dedicated PM role, so the project manager should be the project manager, not a sort of a translator who also stays on the phone. He should be dedicated full time. And then third, you should, to our eyes, have offices abroad, because this enables you to refer to inland native speakers, so that your colleagues can also interact in an international environment, which is much better. Fourth, in-house translation staff, much needed. Okay. It improves quality, it cuts down on costs dramatically, and it creates a sense of corporate culture that is all you need, okay, to succeed. Because if you do not establish a business culture in your company, you are like the mailbox agencies, who are just representations, representatives of freelance translators, nothing more. Then we would advise you to carry out linguistic research, and so you maybe need some linguists well dedicated to research. At present, we have a couple of translators who spend half of their day doing these researches. This is truly costly activity, but it pays off because it gives you authoritativeness, and this enables you to help to stay side by side with your translation staff, okay, and provide them with the appropriate answers to their questions. And then investment in CAT tools. So that's very heavy, because information technology today are one of the major items in your list of expenses, okay, in your balance. So all in all, this is like the recipe for your cake. And same as yesterday, I'm very much open to any questions you may have, especially maybe to questions from the newcomers, those who have not been here yesterday. So please, I'm ready to talk for hours, as I said yesterday. I love talking.
You said a lot about quality, and that a translator should have time to revise his or her work after done it. But how exactly does all this process and all those resources which are engaged in this process pay off? How does it work in the practice of deadlines and budgets, where clients normally are willing to pay the less possible for the highest possible quality?
They are willing to.
And they can find it?
No,
somewhere else.
But from what I know, they can agree for less quality for less cost.
Okay, this is a very expensive talk. It should be a very expensive talk for me. Well, you have various categories of clients, And in general terms, some clients, mostly big or medium-sized enterprises, okay, they need securities, they need quality texts as well. So if you are geared towards providing quality or medium quality services, if you want to provide quality services, you should aim at those clients. And do not consider those who want to pay Mercedes or a Ferrari like €1. They can't have it. I mean, it's not viable. So you should position yourself in a specific market niche, okay, in a specific market level, and target only those clients. And you cannot satisfy the needs or meet the needs or the wishes of those who do not want to pay, because basically if these costs, I also use euros, excuse me, €5, I can't give it to you for 2, because it doesn't make sense. So, but there is a rationale in the market, there are some rules in the market, and those who claim they can give it to you for 2 will eventually fall. So take your time, wait, let them go on first, promote them, it's better, please. And it's, no, you have to be like a shark. Stay around and enjoy, because the time will come. Okay. I don't say you can make big money. I don't say it. It's no longer that time. Okay. It's no. The 80s, the 90s have gone. You can make a profit, a reasonable profit. How much? 15% before tax, after tax. It's up to you, but you don't make the big money, okay? 30–40% will go away as a translation costs, and then even almost as much for your fixed IT, marketing, human resources, management costs, offices abroad, that stuff, and you have your paper thin margin maybe left to you. Okay. Did I answer your question? Maybe not, because you asked a very wide question.
Somehow yes. I know that this is a very wild topic.
Okay, so you just I don't want to be politically incorrect. You cannot fight with China. No, forget.
Nobody can.
Okay, cannot. You have to give a different service. That's it. If you want to fight with China, you have to clamp down, to cut down on human resources costs. And this comes with backlashes, with some troubles. Very soon you will have them. So personnel is not satisfied, people leave you, you don't sleep at night. Okay.
Another question is, who really assess quality? Because you have your revisors in-house who say this is good, this is not so good, but then it goes to the client who really decides if it is satisfying his needs or not. So
yes.
And if the client revisor is, let's say, not so skilled is not in the 16% of the people who really can manage their language, but it's 84% of the rest. So all the quality and all this assurance can be lost.
Wow, in that case, you can have fun. So you can really talk with the client. I hope when we have the first contact with the client, we know that it's the first contact and that something has to be fine-tuned, that something is missing, that something is not in the right place. It is always so, because it's our first job for that client. So, for sure, await a kind of feedback, corrective feedback. If you get that feedback, it can be a proactive, positive feedback, it can be kind of a reclamation. Be happy, because they care, they consider you, okay? You are still there. If you don't hear anything from them, maybe you are dead, okay? So rather be happy, you know, if you have a feedback. It can be negative as well, but if you have a crisis, you have the opportunity to manage the crisis. We said it before, we have specific procedures for managing a crisis, and it really makes fun, because you have the opportunity to interact with another person who maybe is right, and you learn and you build. Or maybe that person is wrong. So you have a wonderful chance, as in your lifetime, to try to explain some aspects, no? Your point of view. And if you, and here, you needed to be like a psychologist or something like, you need a kind of public relation competences. If you really achieve doing so, I mean, you can establish a long-term relation. The best client we have were our clients who have been disappointed with our work the first time. But it's like when you have your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, and you have a fight. It's the best way to go on, okay? You need fights. You can't be always happy like a SpongeBob. Right. So, your project managers have to be prepared to manage a crisis and to make the most out of a crisis, because it has to be a constructive process. Not, you are not there to defend your ideas or to fight for your ideas. You have to be very open, very diplomatic, and step by step take them to understand your point. If you are right, if you are wrong, say, excuse me, we can do better, we can put in place like a corrective action, we can do this, this and this to improve. You put it in writing, and you demonstrate that you reach those milestones, that you reach those targets. Okay? The problem that you have, if you are a reliable, a fair company, a solid company, the problems that you are could be the problem of another supplier, but his problem would be much bigger. Did I answer your...
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, you were saying that there is no Superman in this business, but from what you've said later, I see that actually the PM should be a kind of a Superman, because the person needs to manage, negotiate, be a psychiatrist, and understand the languages to check after the personnel.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I only have two of them.
Supermans.
And now, there is a movie going on there, and they said officially they couldn't be replaced so easily, because they are the result of 6 or 7 years training. So they are the result of a long training, and I spend most of my day talking with them. We have kind of 1 hour or 2 hours a day meetings every single day, and we go over their problems most of the time. So they are the very backbone of the organization. They should be so. In our company it is so, but okay, then we have other agencies where the project manager simply take the jobs and and drop it. So that is not project management, that's post office. But with a post office, it just takes a few cents for those times. It costs less. They are highly specialized. Who comes next? Please.
Sure. I just want to add something about the problem of literal translation. I think that this approach is practiced in many universities because translation is considered an exercise in order to learn a language, not in order to learn how to translate. And this means that during the classes, they don't take care of denotative or connotative function of the word. They don't take care of the context and of the situation, of the pragmatic approach we have during our translation classes or interpretation classes. And that's the point, because since many students who finish this classical philologies, they, English, literature, language and literature, French, Italian, and so on. Afterwards, with their diplomas, they want to work as a translators. They don't have a particular special, approach to the translation, to the text as a translation product, and so their approach is the same as during the classes at universities.
Yes, exactly. It's the same problem we find. Yeah. It's a lack of grit, it's a lack of awareness. And there is no need for it on the market. Yeah.
They are not aware of the fact that sometimes, as you told at the beginning, you have to change the word, to use another word, in order to say the same.
Yes, exactly. You have to change the word, or maybe you could, if that is the case, you could propose your client to skip that phrase, that sentence, that concept, because for that local audience it is not advisable to express it or to put it so.
Sometimes you simply have not to translate in order to translate well.
Yes, exactly. Has it happened to you already? Something like it? It will happen. But okay, in this case, you should write to the client and explain in writing your position, why you suggest doing so. And I would really suggest you to ask for the permission of the client in writing, because otherwise you may have trouble then. Okay, always put everything in writing. and then make a call, because emails are not enough. You send an email, then you make a call. If needed, please ask for a meeting with the client and explain the problem and try to establish, this personal relation, which is very much needed. Feel free to ask your client everything you want, because you are not supposed to be him or her. I mean, you are not a mechanical engineer. You can't supposed to be a mechanical engineer, because if you were a mechanical engineer, you would, design and optimize. I mean, it would. So if you are just you are there to communicate in another language what the client wants to say, but you should ask for his or her permission to enter his mind and to have a complete understanding of what he wants to say. So you need to ask. And most of the times you will find source texts that are not clear. Not because maybe you cannot understand them because you're stupid, because you are... No, not because of that, but maybe because the client himself has written them in the wrong way. I mean, it is writing is difficult for us, and especially for a mechanical engineer who writes this manual as a source text. So you need really to have a reference person with whom you can have a dialogue. And our revisors spend hours on the phone talking with people in order to show that we care, that we try to understand. And this pays off in the future. This really also, when we talk about these low price offers, this throat-cutting competition, the only way to fight back is to restore the trust, is to show people that you are not a service similar to the other services of the market, but show them that you can make the difference. And the only way we have to show that we can make the difference, apart from delivering a correct text, is to show that we work on that. You can deliver a perfect text, but maybe your client will never read it, and he will never praise you, and you will be so upset and frustrated. But so is life. So the only way, I'm very slimy now, okay? The only way is also to show that your staff is working hard, and having like 4 or 5 telephone calls in order to clarify some doubts is helpful for a translator or revisors, but this builds up your image. It shows that you care, I care, okay? So you are different from a short-term business profit agency where texts are taken and dropped. That's it. And this is essential, really. Try to have a dialogue.
Just a technical query. Is it not disruptive for the client to answer all those telephones from the translators, from the revisers, clarifying their doubts?
Yes and no. If the client has a good understanding of what you do, of your role and of the relevance of your task, then the client will be willing to answer those calls. If the client doesn't care, is ignorant, allow me to say, in that case you should make those calls, but be very diplomatic So you use your special forces, your PMs, you parachute them, they are able to do so, and they are able to go around and try to explain to the client that something is needed. You know, I am personally, maybe I am the #1 client of SNG, because I write a lot, okay, and all my writings have to be translated. I am my #1 client. And I really want my staff to ask me, because I can't believe they get it all, because I'm not good at writing as well, you know. So I expect them to ask, and I am afraid if they don't. Really, I'm scared. And if you come to work with big companies like big multinational corporation, where you maybe have a dialogue, you have a contact with their translation department. In that case, we are colleagues, okay, and they are happy if you share your doubts. But your doubts should be reasonable. So don't ask them, what is a manual? Of course. Your questions, your queries should be, and we do so, should be first verified and approved by the project manager. So the project manager, being hopefully a linguist as well, she has to make sure that those questions are relevant, pertinent, and are okay. So the very questions as well have to be filtrated, let's say, by the project manager. And I would suggest to have the project manager like the interface between the translation staff asking and client answering. Unless you are 100% confident with your revisor, who can maybe have a direct contact with the client. Don't know if I could answer your question.
Perfect.
All right, so maybe a more general one. I consider you an international expert, and I don't know whether you had a look at the Polish translation market, but if you had, could you compare it to the Western Europe, let's say? Is it much different? Because from my short experience, the Polish market is, as my colleague said, they crave for low prices and don't care for quality, as opposed to Germany, let's say.
Yes. We do not have a reliable data to answer this question. We just have a perception, and we had some feedback given from German clients we have, and I would not just focus on Poland. I would focus on many other countries. Of course, competition here can be hard also in terms of cost, because I think that many of the Western companies came here with the purpose, like the automotive industry also, with the purpose of cutting down on costs. And this is not noble. A noble perspective. So you may have truly clients who want to cut down on the prices, and this can be a problem. As a matter of fact, I really understand what your colleague said, because as a matter of fact, there is a need to have low prices, but you should focus rather on who have a more far-sighted vision, I think. Because otherwise you don't have the right margin unless you provide a good quality service. I'm not talking about delivering 4 pages, I talk about delivering big volumes. So maybe having a single supply can be okay, you can still make some margin, but if you really have a production, you need the margin. Americans say you need to have a profitable business, because otherwise it doesn't stand. Okay? So you need to make a profit, full stop. It's a matter of positioning. I don't think that the Polish market is only low price market. I don't think at all. Because if low cost means poor quality, means that they do not communicate, means that they have errors. Maybe they save 1,000 zloty for a translation, but their machine breaks down and this costs them 2 billion zloty. It doesn't make sense. Okay? So select the clients, or even if, okay, a big client, if you have a big client, consider that, let's say you have a big automotive company. 80% of their texts can be low quality texts. We don't need to, okay? But in that case, you should try to talk only with that department who has to issue like the marketing material, the communication material, that 20% high quality volume. Studio Moreto Group, me, the major client of SMG. Me too, I sometimes request translations for administrative purposes. Like I establish a new company, I do not really need top quality with all texts, and I tell it. But this is a contract, okay, but I don't need high quality level for this contract, because nobody will ever implement it, nobody will ever look at it, so just let it go. So very often I simply ask for a single translation with even no revision, because I don't care, because nobody will ever read it. It is destined to an office, and then they put it somewhere. They put a stamp on it, and that's it. You don't need quality there. So in that case, and I go back to my first slide, you don't need to provide a good translation, maybe. You need to provide a useful translation. And for me, useful is, I need it for tomorrow, it should cost little money, because nobody will ever look at it. Okay, so if you can really establish a dialogue with your client will tell you the quality level he needs. And then of course it is more, it is better, it makes more fun to work always with top quality translations. So maybe do not talk with the purchasing department only, just maybe try to get context with the marketing department, because they have high quality material to issue, right? We said in Latin America, for instance, in Latin America prices are very low, very low. And, but we found advertising agencies who are ready to pay the right price, because they need that value. We shouldn't talk about price, we should always talk about value. A Mercedes costs a lot because that value is so high. While there's a video going on, a Fiat, an old Fiat in the 80s, 90s costed not so much, because that period, quality was not so important. Okay, our old 500. It was not so. It's value. It's not money. You can't sell big value for little money. It doesn't work. You don't make a profit. You shut down. And your competitors have the same problem. So either they cheat and they pretend, or they could establish the right dialogue and sell this quality, this value for the right money. So I would suggest you to sell value for that money, not to cheat. It's not good.
More questions? Bardzo dziękuję za uwagę, bardzo dziękuję. Dziękujemy za przybycie i za takie bardzo wyczerpujące wyjaśnienia o tym, jak powinno funkcjonować każda firma, która zajmuje się tłumaczeniami. Dziękuję bardzo.